Biology, I noticed that in the subsequent pages I had a piece of information that was sort of out of order. So this is the page we've already done, but at the very bottom I reposted something from another page because it didn't make sense where it was, and that is this, talking about the size of bacteria. And we're just going to put it here. Okay, so bacteria are prokaryotes. Those are the only prokaryotes we know about for biology, well, in general, yes, at all. Those are the prokes, the bacteria. And those are 10 to 100 times smaller than eukaryotic cells. Okay, so bacteria are much smaller than eukaryotic cells, which means lots of them can live in one cell, unfortunately, as we're going to see when we talk about bacterial diseases. Okay, so I'm going to leave that here on this page. I took it from the next page and put it on here because it didn't make sense on the next page. All right, the next page are a bunch of structures, and I'm going to give you an assignment. Basically, you're just going to have to look up what each of these things do. Recall, however, that because bacteria are prokaryotes, they don't have a real nucleus. They don't have a nucleus, and they don't have organelles. But they do have some structures that you need to know what they are. And I think that you looking these up and finding them and typing them down will put them in your brain better than me just telling you what they are. So I am going to let you look those up. The reason I left it in here was so that you understand this is stuff that could be on the test, right? This is part of the notes. So this is all stuff that could be on the test. I'm giving you an assignment to make sure you have identified this stuff. But let's move on to reproduction in bacteria. Bacteria usually reproduce asexually. Let's recall again what asexual reproduction is. Asexual reproduction doesn't need two organisms, it just needs one. Sexual reproduction has to have two organisms, a male part and a female part getting together. Asexual is not that. This is what bacteria usually do. And they do it by a process called binary fission. It is similar to mitosis, but it's not as complex, it's not as complicated, because number one, the DNA in bacteria isn't contained within a membrane-bound nucleus, okay? It still has to replicate its replicate its DNA, but it's not quite as complex because it's not all contained in a nucleus, and it doesn't have a bunch of organelles to reproduce either. So it's similar to mitosis, but basically you have one bacteria and it just kind of splits into two. Maybe I can find a video of that. That is what bacteria usually do to reproduce. But bacteria can also do a form of sexual reproduction. And again, just to remind you, sexual reproduction involves the exchange of genetic material. You have two different individuals, two different organisms that exchange genetic material. They use those pili that you have to define on the other page, and they perform a process called conjugation. And they use the pili to exchange different parts of their chromosomes with another bacteria. This is not the kind of reproduction they do most often. Usually it's asexual binary fission, but they can do this conjugation, which is a form of sexual reproduction.